Also a 17-year resident of District 100. I moved to District 100 and bought my first home in Dallas when I became the executive director of the Dallas County Democratic Party. That was the year that we broke a Republican 30-year winning streak and first started winning countywide elections in Dallas County, which led to Dallas County turning blue and being the beacon of hope for Texas. I went on to work for Senator Royce West. I was his political director and a legislative aide for 7 years, working in the state Senate. I also worked um, as a chief of staff for State Representative Tony Rose and a senior advisor for her currently, and I've been with her for 5 years. In between that time, I worked with Enroll America, signing up individuals to get health care under Obamacare. As we know, North Texas is the most uninsured region in America. And I left Senator West's office to go do that work because healthcare has always been a key issue and a key concern. My mother's a nurse. My father is a pastor, and I grew up in a household that gave back. That's how I was born and raised. And so that's what I've continued to do throughout my career choices. And it's the reason that I'm putting my name in the hat to run for House District 100. So thanks for your time. I look forward to the discussion today and looking forward to talking about the work that I've done and what I continue to do and what I'm planning on doing to impact this district as we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and go next, Mr. Marquis.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you all so much for having this forum, and appreciate you all for inviting us. I'm Marquis Hawkins. I was born to a mother who was strong enough to raise me by herself, and she instilled in me the values of hard work and perseverance, but a belief that not everything that everyone wants to have is not guaranteed, and that although the success is not guaranteed, that anywhere you live in the nation, opportunity should always be possible, no matter how much money you have, no matter how intelligent you are. Every opportunity should be imparted to everybody and across this society in our country. And I, as a person, I've lived in Oak Cliff, what I feel is like the heart of House District 100 for about 10 years now. And I think it's one of the greatest places in all of Dallas, all of Texas. I think that we've got incredible, thriving small businesses, a rich history, and then just a community of folks who are always trying to look out for one another. And oftentimes I do see that my neighbor across the street who can't afford their property tax bill, that some students whose dreams are evaporating every single day at some of our greatest schools, that a lot of seniors don't have access to basic quality healthcare and fear a health diagnosis that will bankrupt them. I think that that's not right, and we can't accept those things as normal in District 100. And that's why I decided to get in this race. I think that I have a voice to offer in that solution. I have seen these things up close and personal in my work across this district and beyond, working from Dallas ISD and working across every group that you can think of, whether it be professionally or whether it be in my own private life. I've now spent several years working in state legislatures across the entire country, seeing exactly up close how legislators not only make laws, but how varying our situations are here in Texas, and that there are solutions that we could actually draw from that we often choose not to. We choose politics over people. And I think we can't do that. I think that it's our time to change that narrative. And that's why I'm in this race. And I'm hoping that I can earn the vote of the folks across District 100 to be your next state representative.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hawkins. Next, we'll have Mr. Vinton Jones.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me this evening to talk about the campaign. My name is Vinton Jones, and I am an actual native of House District 100. I was born and raised off Marcellus in Iowa in the Oak Cliff area. Went off to college to work on public health and work on addressing minority health, particularly for communities like House District 100, who have some of the highest uninsured rates, as I was already mentioned, but also have higher rates of other health conditions, also other issues such as food deserts. I'm also someone who has worked in the community to address other issues that exist in the community around building jobs and representing the needs of middle class families and communities that continue to be unheard in conversations in Austin. And after growing up in House District 100, I came back to House District 100 to start a business. I run a nonprofit now in House District 100 that's focusing on building positive health outcomes, building connections with elected officials, building connections with other officials to be able to help improve what we are seeing for so many communities in places like House District 100, where we see the economic growth that's happening around the city. But for so many people who have spent their blood, sweat, and tears building a family, building homes, buying property, they're losing those opportunities to pass that to their generations. And I'm running because I'm seeing that not only in the work that I've been able to do, not only with the Democratic Party, but throughout the state of Texas and our country. But I'm also doing that because I'm seeing that in my family, where I'm, working to help support, my grandmother who lives across the street, and other, family members who are, seniors now, who have, seen their homes, who are now having to make hard decisions regarding their homes, their health care, and just their overall economic stability, in retirement. And that's another huge reason that I'm running, because not only seeing it in the 15 years of work I've been able to do in community, but I see it in my family, and I want to change that. And there's a perfect opportunity to be able to do that, to make change, not only for my family, but for the many families that represent House District 100. So thank you so much for this opportunity to bring us on to have some conversation about our campaigns.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for taking the time to even be a part of this podcast. A couple of things I want to just cover just in the interim. We did, excuse me, we did offer the invitation to Miss Sandra Crenshaw, and we got an email from her a couple of minutes before the show started that she wasn't able to attend. So, but we just want to let that be known that she was extended the invitation. And also, with your mom having some issues before, but seems like he's back with us. So it was perfect timing, actually, because Ben had just finished when you came on. So we'll turn it over to Ramon so he can start going straight into the questions that we have for you guys tonight.
Okay.
So thank you.
And this first question we'll start off with you, Marquis. What inspires you?
Every day I wake up and I think about my kids that I used to teach. I used to be a public school teacher several years ago, and now they're off. They've punched their ticket and on to life, and some of them are in college, some of them have jobs, some of them are serving our military. And I think about them all the time, and then I also think about the students I mentor every day here in Dallas. And that future is one of the main reasons why I got into public service in the first place, is because our kids deserve the best. I think that anything less is a betrayal of our future and a betrayal of our obligations to them. And so who inspires me are, I'll call their names. As the elders say, you're supposed to call the people's names. And Donald Hurst, Josue Orozco, Chris Moore. There are several children that I've interacted with who are going to do even greater things than these. And so that's my inspiration every single day.
Okay. And next, you, Mr. Clayton, what inspires you today, man?
I'm going to tell you, just this Sunday, my son turned 16 years old. And every single day, I wake up thinking about what type of future is he going to have in District 100. He's lived his entire life. I've lived here for 17 years. He's 16. He's lived his entire life in District 100. And that was the case when the state troopers were in South Dallas over policing our community. and he was with me driving through our community. And every time we left our home, going to Fiesta, because that's where we shop and buy our groceries, because we spend our money in our community. And every time we left the home, we would see 3 to 4 different police officers having pulled people over just from my trip from my home to Fiesta, about a mile and a half. And I saw that, and I saw him seeing it, and I said, you know what, Daniel, if we don't do anything about it, if you don't do anything about it, you're sending a message that these types of activities, this over policing, is normal, that it's accepted. And so that's part of the reason that I fought to get the state troopers out of South Dallas. Not completely. We let them know that we need a police presence in our communities, but at the same time, over policing is not welcome. It damages our businesses, and we fought to get it out of our community. And within a week, actually about 4 days of us having a community meeting with the state troopers, they dispersed across the city. And we still had some in our community. And we were able to see them start to do some policing in other communities instead of being completely concentrated. When it comes to education and other issues, my son is the central focus. I volunteered at his school for 10 years reading, and I also started a social emotional learning program at his school as a volunteer, because I was inspired to make sure that the community that we live in is going to be safe for our future generations.
All right. All right. And you, Mr. Vin?
Okay, I would say from me, this may sound a little bit cliche, but I would say my community, and the reason I say that because we've come out of a very hard 2 years as we prepare to to wrap up 2021. And as a result of COVID-19, I think that so many of us have had to pivot in a way that has really showed ingenuity and creativity and what we need right now as we face some of our hardest challenges as a community, navigating the need to be around each other, navigating the need to make sure that our people are safe and that our bodies are safe, especially as we right now have a conversation as Black men and what has transpired over the last 2 years, and how we have literally been glued to our living room couches watching these things play out. So I'm motivated by how our community has really shown up, whether we talk about through the creation of digital platforms like this one so that our stories could be told, whether it was the creation of new abilities for us to be able to to have socially distant opportunities to engage each other. But we really had to come out of the box, and it's been amazing now kind of getting out a little bit and seeing that and being reconnected, and how the community has evolved to continue to meet the need. And so I'm inspired by that, and I look forward to see what we are going to continue to grow into as we go into this this super important election year.
Okay, good deal. And we're going to keep this question on you, Mr. Jones, and then after you, Mr. Clayton, and then Marquis. What is something that people seem to misunderstand about you?
If I could be honest, that I've always loved policy work, or that I've always, loved the ability to run for office. I think that as a public health professional and as a person that came from a family of public health providers, what I realized at a very early age in my career, how important the policies were, how important the engagement was with the elected officials. And I was just a person that's like, just let me do the job, let me help people, and it's going to be good. But what I learned, during that time, and what really brought me into being involved in Democratic politics, first as a board member of the Stonewall Democrats of Dallas, was that if we are going to be talking about improving public health challenges, we could not leave, the critical conversations about social justice, about economic justice, about education equality, and all those critical things that that we're talking about, on this campaign trail. And so the biggest misunderstanding sometimes I see especially as of recent, and as the last the last decade of my life and career, was that policy and politics was always something easy. I think for me it became necessary, and it's necessary for so many in our community to be able to start understanding that work and starting to advance that work in a way that continues to advance our communities right now.
So for me, I have a very similar pathway as Vinton. I identify with that because all I do right now is policy work. But I started off going to school for art direction. I was an advertising major and a writer. And one of the things that's most misunderstood about me is that people think that I started off doing political science and all that stuff. And really, I'm an artist and a poet. One of the things I'd like to share is that one of my first published pieces was a poem in a book that came out through UT Austin called Experiments in the Jazz Aesthetic: Art, Activism, Academia, and the Austin Project, in which I published a poem about my grandmother called The History of Jazz. I've always had this connection with the women in my life, particularly the women in my family and the work that they've done. My grandmother that I wrote this poem about was actually a social worker for the state in East Texas during a time where it was dangerous to be an African American, let alone going from county to county doing social work and helping people. Not having always worked in politics, and definitely an avid writer and an artist and a photographer.
So I would say that it would be sort of the breadth of the work that I've been doing over the last several years. My auntie always tells me that people would rather see a sermon than hear one, and I've really taken that to heart, in such that I don't broadcast any of the things I do. I don't broadcast resume. I don't broadcast any of the work, any of that. And so it's, for me, I literally about how it is, how I'm achieving the basic human need of the satisfaction of life. Everybody is supposed to have everything they need in life, and whatever I can do to provide that. I don't need a trophy. I don't need any of the glitz and glamour that could come with that. And so throughout this entire experience so far, the short experience in the campaign, the biggest critique that people have been saying is that you need to talk about the stuff that you do. And it's going to be difficult, but I think that I'm going to try my best to.
All right. Oh man, this has been an awesome dialogue, man. We thank you guys so much for your comments thus far. I'm going to deviate just a little bit just to address a question we have in the comments from a Facebook user as a state rep, and I'm going to address this. We'll start with you, Mr. Hawkins. As a state rep, how will you impact the Latino community, and will you have diversity in staff? And we'll start with you on that.
Absolutely, I would have diversity in staff, and I think that from my vantage point, we've got to make sure that we are all collaborating across racial lines to achieve any positive outcome we can for people. And I 100% believe that there's a place for a diverse staff and when I'm state representative. One of the major things I think that will impact Latino communities over the next several years has to do with our educational outcomes. Although I've seen tremendous gains across the district because of all of House District 100 is within Dallas ISD. We've seen tremendous gains among Latino boys as well as Latino girls, and I think that the state has a role to play in ensuring that we keep those gains going. Additionally, I think that we have to really start talking about healthcare needs for Latinx communities. I think that they often get lost, even when we're talking about needs for African Americans. I think that we need to elevate those just as well, because they are just as valuable. Those are the two immediate things I can think of. And as I said, again, a diverse staff is top priority for me.
Thank you. We'll go next to Mr. Clayton.
Sure, thank you. So, provided that the voters of the district elect me as the next state representative, you're going to see a couple things. First of all, those who live in this district know for a fact that there hasn't always been a district office for this seat. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is keep that district office open, keep it community. We're going to have open community hours. I'm going to be accessible. And I'm definitely going to have diverse staff. I've got diverse staffers on my campaign, and they say show and prove. When I was the executive director for the Dallas County Democratic Party, I immediately diversified the staff. We actually had the biggest staff that the party ever had, and we had folks who were young and old, all races, all ethnicities, all orientations, in our office working together. It was a priority, and we got it done. And I think that's what helped make the difference. So you're going to see a diversity. I'm going to make sure that we've got folks who are bilingual in the office, who can communicate with every single person in the district. I'm going to make sure that when we do our town halls, we're going to have a bilingual person translating. I'm going to make sure that we are accessible and that every single person can access us. And I think that's absolutely important. Making sure that we service the community is really one of the most important jobs of a state representative. I've done a lot of casework over my 12 years working for the state, and will continue to do that. So I understand the importance of each individual being able to access our office and access the help that they need. People are losing their homes. People are losing their jobs. They're unable to get their unemployment because employers pull the rug under them all the time. Just a couple of weeks ago, I helped an individual get their unemployment, and they got a $6,000 check from unemployment because they've been denied what they needed. And this person was bilingual and had difficulty communicating, but we made sure that we had the conversation and were able to get it done. So you'll see that type of leadership out of my office, provided that I'm elected.
Thank you, Ms. Clayton. Mr. Vinton Jones.
Well, as someone who was born and raised in House District 100, I have grown up literally side by side next to the Latino community, and so it's always been second nature to work to build that bridge. And I want to also share about some things that have already been done in my career to work build bridges in between with the Latino community. When I founded the nonprofit DFW Pride movement, our work was to build bridges within the Black and Latino LGBT community by hosting the Black and Brown Summit, which we actually brought together Black leaders, brought together Latino leaders, and talked about strategies to be able to have our communities to be able to work together. Because if we are not working together, there will be forces that continue to work to try to divide our communities, divide our votes, divide our voices, to make sure that none of us wins. So we really have to come into this, really looking to work, with each other. I am, very big on building partnerships and building coalitions. So I think that there are key and critical organizations in, this conversation, like LULAC, like like the Tejano Democrats, that you really have to just reach out to those leaders to really make sure that you are staying in constant connection with the Latino community and its leadership, while also making sure that you're not just utilizing organizations, but you're also knocking on doors and making those meaningful connections with the people who are also going to be, who are our neighbors, in these conversations. And those families are facing the same, some of those same important issues that we're talking about, in the Black community, making sure that food's on the table, making sure that jobs are paying enough to where people are supported, making sure that we're not touching the retirement of those who have worked hard in our school systems, in our and throughout our state. So I think it's going to be very important to continue to hear those voices, to bring those voices inside, and also to be very active in spaces that brings together the Latino community to talk about what's important to their community. And I am going to bring that to Austin and continue to bring that voice so that all communities are represented, and also making sure that staff inside the office is representative of the community too, and that there's immunity and ability to communicate with all as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Couple things I want to just cover also, just for the late viewers that just joined us. Some folks may be questioning why it's only 3 gentlemen on the show. We actually extended the invite to the other candidate, which is Sandra Crenshaw, but last minute she did advise she wasn't able to attend. We just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that everybody that's running for House District 100 was extended the invite, so that there's no misunderstanding on that. So just want to just throw that caveat out there so everybody knows. So we'll move on to the next question. And if you have any questions, please shoot them in the comments, because we'll definitely try to address those questions for you during this conversation with these gentlemen. My next question would be to all of you, and I'll start with Mr. Hawkins, is because some of you actually touched on it a little bit, but what got you interested in running for public office? And we'll start with you, Mr. Hawkins.
Yep. All right. So one of my favorite quotes is one from Bobby Kennedy, and he says, "There are people who look around and see the world as the way it is, and ask why. I dream of things that never were and say, why not?" And I oftentimes think, why not? Why is it that people have to struggle to pay rent? And why is there rising property taxes? Why are people having to struggle and go through hoops to get basic access to Medicaid and Medicare? Why is it that people aren't caring about homeless kids? I could dream of a day that we actually create policy solutions for all of those things. And it's not something hard. His brother said that these are all human problems and made by humans, so they're human solutions to these. And so, and for me, I'm 100% committed to making sure that we leave this world better than we found it, and in an authentic way. And so, for me, getting involved in politics and getting involved in public service is always completely about the work. And so, how are we bettering the lives of people more so than they are today, essentially?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that comment. We'll go to Mr. Jones.
Well, I'm interested in running for public office because I think that this time and this moment is important for a new generation of leaders to step up, of people who are and who have put in, the work to work to change our communities. And, you can easily complain about what's not being done, or you can roll up your sleeves and be a part of the solution. And so I'm interested in running for not necessarily public office. I'm interested in running for this office because I want to make a difference in the community that I was born and raised in. I want to use the experience that I've had and amassed, working on policy, working alongside elected officials, working most importantly alongside community to continue to impact change. And in a time right now to where there's not going to be a lot of bills that we're going to be passing right now until we get power in the House. But what we need to amass is political will. what we need to amass are more voters. What we need to really be looking at in the long term is doing everything that we can in our respective places and spaces to turn Texas blue and get very focused on that multi-year, multi-tier goal, and that's what I'm interested in doing, and putting my money where my mouth is, and being a part of that solution.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Mr. Clayton, you're on mute.
Hey, thanks for your help there, sir. So my mom is a nurse, and my dad's a pastor. My grandfather before him was a pastor. So I grew up in a household that gave back to the community every single day. And when I became a college student, I took a mentoring job, first of many. And this is what I discovered. I was mentoring middle school kids, and we learned about issues that they were experiencing and the issues that their parents were experiencing. And so we'd go in and we'd help resolve those issues. And I'll tell you, I promise, every time, 3 or 4 months later, those households were experiencing the exact same issue. And I observed it over and over and over again. And I said, you know what? We're putting Band-Aids on problems that are systemic. And the only way that I'm going to have a real impact, and again, this is the reason that I chose not to become an advertiser, but to become a community organizer, was to get people elected that could change the system so that people wouldn't continue to experience the same issues over and over and over again, as they were designed so that they would experience those issues over and over and over again. That's the reason that I became involved in campaigns. I was fortunate enough to be able to translate that work and move that work into government, and actually work on these policy issues. As a staffer, and everybody knows that the staffers are the ones that they carry that weight during the session. We do the policy work, we do the heavy lifting. The elected officials, of course, they design those policies, and they're the ones that get it across the finish line. But there's a ton of work that happens in the background, and that's what I've been doing. And so I want to continue doing that work as the next state representative. I've worked on tremendous policy issues that have impacted the state of Texas. One of them that I'm really proud of is House Bill 133, this last legislative session. What does it do? It's a maternal mortality bill. And what it does is it extends comprehensive health care to women who give birth on Medicaid from 60 days to 6 months. The studies show that women need 1 entire year of health care to avoid premature death. And the studies also show that 90% of the women that die after giving birth or having a miscarriage, those deaths are preventable. So, getting in there, getting my hands into that policy and actually making that difference is what I chose to do. That's the reason I chose the pathway that I did. I'm not an elected official, but I chose a pathway that I could maximize my talent, maximize my skills, and have that type of impact that I hope to have as the next state representative.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. That's a perfect segue to go into our next question. So thank you for that. And kind of touching on what you just mentioned, Mr. Clayton, we'll start with you. What kind of policies, if any, will you pursue, rather social or racial justice for the communities?
Yeah, sure. So, I could talk about all the things that I've done in the past, but let's talk about what I want to do for the future. One of the things that I did, and I mentioned this earlier, is I started a social emotional learning program at my son's school. And I believe that we can replace punishment in elementary and middle school with social emotional learning. Now, I know that there are some students that need other avenues and other management techniques, but that's only 1 or 2% of the students. I think for everybody else, we can apply social emotional learning and we can eliminate the pipeline to prison. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about. Another thing that I'm very concerned about is the gentrification of our neighborhoods. You have gentrification happening in West Dallas, in South Dallas, where I live. And I believe that just like we freeze taxes, we've passed measures to freeze taxes for certain individuals. What we should do is pinpoint the communities that are at risk of gentrification and freeze the taxes of those seniors and make sure that when other folks come in and they clear off a lot and build a big house, that tax those taxes going up doesn't force our seniors out of their community. And that's something that I'm going to propose as the next state representative. There's also working to expand Medicaid. Again, healthcare is my number one priority. I want to expand Medicaid. I know that we don't have the political environment to do so, but we can certainly do what we did with House Bill 133, which is look for individual instances that we can expand Medicaid to help the most vulnerable, work on it, chip away at it, piece by piece, until we turn Texas blue, and then we can get it done for everybody in the state.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Jones.
All right. So regarding policies, I definitely feel, and it's my background in public health. I'm going to focus on public health and making sure that we have healthcare access for all. And we definitely need to make sure that as we're looking at what does healthcare access look like, we need to see what is still salvageable in the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, and to see what are some next steps, and really starting this meaningful dialogue around what does building in closing the gap with those who are uninsured, or for those who are insured do not have access to these catastrophic policies with these huge co-insurances and other traps that are still putting our so many people in medical debt, not only including our seniors, but also young people who may take a trip to the emergency room one too many times, and has tens of thousands of medical bills now as a result of that. So making sure that we have healthcare access that is affordable for all. Also addressing the school to prison pipeline. In my family, there are so many people, so many men who saw who saw incarceration at too young an age, and got caught up in the system that did not let them go. So how are we building programs for reentry after incarceration, whether we talk about reentry and the need to deal with issues with drug abuse, with issues because we've never created an education system that's teaching us financial literacy and building strong homes, because one thing that's very unique about not only me and in this race, it's everybody on this call and conversation. We are the bridges in between the baby boomers and Generation Z. And with the baby boomers now facing retirement, making these hard decisions about what medications are they going to pay for to to make ends meet this month happen and pay their bills, and then you have another generation that's just now needing to get into the job market, that's needing to grow their ability to start a home, to start a family, to get that first home, those opportunities. So building those bridges in between that, so that we can continue to have neighborhoods and communities for all generations to live, work, and play. So building strength and having our ability to have stronger communities, because we are investing in our communities, and we're investing in our abilities for our communities to grow. And so those are some areas that I would address from a policy perspective, because again, I don't think that we can necessarily stop gentrification from happening, but we definitely need to put some things in place so that the communities that have invested into those communities, that have bought into those communities, continue to reap the reward as these communities continue to grow. And so many are being left behind in that conversation right now.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. Mr. Hawkins.
Yeah.
So, yep. So I'll first start with the there are several prongs to helping solve the social or helping mitigate some of the social and racial justice issues that we are encountering. So first, just with public safety. I mean, there's a whole list of things that we can do around community policing. I'm going to advocate for community policing, and I'm also going to advocate that officers try to live in the neighborhoods that they serve, and that the state government should want to help do that and incentivize that. I don't think that I've ever met anyone who's on if there are sides, the Black Lives Matter side or the Blue Lives Matter side that says I want to live in an unsafe neighborhood. I think everybody wants to live in a safe neighborhood, and I think that that's the way that we can get Republicans and Democrats talking together and saying that we want to create a safer Texas, and this is the only way we can do it. We can talk about clearing warrant backlogs, funding trauma response teams, making sure we have authentically funded and specialized reentry programs for felons, all like the whole 9 yards. I think that these are things that we can actually get done in Austin. That the issues that divide us are more political than the things that are actually going on the ground in terms of public safety. And so those are the things I'm going to immediately start talking about on March 2nd. I think in public service, in public safety, I think that there's so much more in common that we have. We're just talking past each other. With regard to the changing developments of our neighborhoods, I am on the same page with both Mr. Jones and Mr. Clayton. We've got to really put a handle on what's going on in our neighborhoods as it relates to the gentrification and moving out of folks out of neighborhoods that they've grown up in and known as their homes for their entire lives. I've seen examples across the country and never seen or heard anyone in Austin talk about a circuit breaker for people under certain income, or people who are seniors, or people who have a disability. Never heard of it. But it's happening in several other legislatures across the country, and it's working. We have areas that are developing and growing in other cities across the country, and the folks that call that area home are still living there. They're still thriving there, and they're still also taking advantage of all the new resources that are coming online in these newer developing neighborhoods. I think that we should propose things like that, and I think Republicans are on board with things like that because these are Republican solutions in these red states. I see no problem with proposing that at the state level, but we could talk all night about all kinds of policies. I'm a policy wonk, and so that's sort of my job. And I can talk about all these kinds of solutions. But the main thing I want to get across is that we can actually get these things done. These things are not far-fetched. These things are not things that have not been done or proposed in other places. We can actually get these things done and passed in Austin, and they are bipartisan things that people across the board on the ground want to see because people need better outcomes in their lives. And so I think everybody could be on board with these.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate all of you guys' comments. I'm going to turn it over to Tremont for his next question.
Okay. I've heard a couple of times the quote, turning Texas blue. And I'll start this question with Mr. Vinton. Is there such a thing as turning Texas blue?
Yes, but not tomorrow. I think that it's definitely going to be a conversation that's going to take some time and some real setbacks that we're dealing with as a result of redistricting and how we can just continue to see how even though communities of color make up the largest growth in the state, you see that there was a pickup in white seats, and so we have to acknowledge that is happening. And anything that we thought about that was going to work in 2016, we're going to have to take that up because now we have these new lines that have been drawn, and they're not in favor of our communities. And so there is. We have a very real conversation about turning Texas blue. But that is going to really take us as a party moving to get more voters out, to get more voters connected with the issues, and get more leaders that are running for office connected with community, so that people can see themselves in the people that are representing them in these, critical positions. And that's going to be so important. And part of the reason that I spent time, a decade in Washington, D.C., learning, at our nation's capital, public policy, so that I could bring that back home and be comfortable staying right here, doing this work, at home, versus, I think everybody, kind of has a place and space to go. But for me, it's really coming back home and to continue and doing that work. And I think that that's going to be critical things that we're going to have in our communities, people coming back home and helping to get people out, getting those mothers, those fathers, those sisters, those cousins, those corner stores, voting and connected with the issues. Because, as a precinct chair and election judge, I've heard so often in, Black and brown communities of Cost House District 100, how people have not even met their elected officials, and that they only come by, when they're running for office, and they're not really listening to me. And so when people come, feel unheard like that, yeah, we have a theory of turning Texas blue, but that's not going to be done without reaching each and every corner of Black and brown, House districts, and turning out those voters and making sure that those voters are heard. But they won't come out until we make sure that we continue to come out for those communities. And that's the work that has to be done, to get them out, to get them at the polls, and not only get them at the polls for presidential elections, but to keep them at the polls and to keep them, voting, for Democrats down the ballot.
Okay. Same question for you, Mr. Hawkins. Is there such thing as turning Texas blue?
I think you turn Texas blue, and it starts today. I think that the way that you turn Texas blue is talking voter by voter and going door to door, block by block. I had a conversation today where I was campaigning, knocked on the door of a gentleman, and he said, "I'm not going to vote at all." He wasn't even on my list. His mother was. He said, "I'm not voting at all in your election." He said, "The last time I voted was for Barack Obama. I have no reason to vote." And so you've got to provide people a reason to get out to vote. And I think that if you talk about people issues, people-focused solutions, people become invested. And, for me, I didn't spend much time thinking about, he's a registered voter now, and he's voting for me. But I didn't spend much time celebrating that fact, but knowing instead and reflecting on that we've got to do that exact same thing in every single place across the state if the theory of turning Texas blue is actually going to become a reality. And that's hard work. It's callous hands. And, I think that we have all the ingenuity and all the knowledge and all the manpower in the state to do it. We just actually have to get it done. And so I 100% believe that we can turn Texas blue. It might not happen in this cycle, but I damn sure believe it could happen in the next couple of cycles.
Okay. Mr. Clayton, the same question. Is there such a thing as turning Texas blue?
So before I jump into that question, you have to understand that you're talking to the former statewide field director of the Texas Democratic Party. You're talking to someone who served as the first African-American executive director of the Dallas County Democratic Party when, people didn't think we had a snowball's chance to win anything. And, when you looked at the numbers, we didn't. We weren't supposed to win any elections the year that I was the executive director. But this is what we did. We diversified our staff. We taught our candidates, and I turned the Democratic Party into the campaign mechanism for all of our candidates. And we ran a coordinated campaign. And by doing so, we were able to win the first countywide elections in Dallas County in 30 years for Democrats. And the rest is history, as everyone knows. So you're talking about somebody that is a party loyalist, a true believer, and someone that's gotten the job done. When we talk about turning Texas blue, this is how we do it. First of all, and I am committed to doing this. if I'm elected as the next state representative, you're going to see a campaign from me every single election cycle, whether or not I have an opponent or not. And I believe that if every single safe Democratic seat turned out their electorate during November elections, we would have already elected. We would have already elected statewide Democratic candidates. And I understand redistricting. I've been through several redistricting cycles. And so I understand the difficulty that we're now going to have with the state legislature. But we can take a statewide election if every single Democratic safe seat runs an election. And it's proven Beto O'Rourke lost by just a few points statewide. We could have elected him. And if we had elected him then we'd be at the point where we could sweep the entire state right now. So I believe that we can win. Democrats can win now. We can take Texas. And by doing so, we can change the full trajectory of our entire nation. Do you know how many congresspersons come out of Texas? And we know that 95% of the growth in Texas was from minority growth. We need a new redistricting process. We know that if the Department of Justice rules were in place, that what just happened wouldn't fly. We've got to get it done on the national level, but it starts with our state. Our state is critical for the nation. We can get it done now. I've done the work. I've made it happen in Dallas County. We can make it happen in Texas. I believe that, and I think that we can do it, and I know that we can do it.
Good deal, man. Good deal. And we're going to keep this question on you, Mr. Clayton. So with this district, it's a majority Black and brown. The question I have is the Black and brown vote taken for granted? And if so, how do we change that narrative?
I'm the former statewide president of the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats. I served in that statewide position for 7 years. And this is, again, coming from someone who's worked within the party. Absolutely, the African-American vote's been taken for granted. Absolutely, the Latino vote's been taken for granted. And the only way that we change that is by electing leadership who's going to continue to work to turn out our base, continue to communicate with everyone up and down. I mean, you saw in Dallas County, when Dallas County turned blue, there was a huge pushback against minority candidates running for judge in this county. And it was quite unfortunate. And it demonstrated somewhat of a split within the Democratic Party. And I think that there are some gaps in the Democratic Party that need to be healed, that need to be addressed. And a lot of times we don't want to talk about it because everybody wants to say that the Democratic Party is all yippee-ki-yay. And it's not always that way. And as an African American who's worked within the system, I know that, African American votes have been taken for granted. African American votes have been split so that we could elect other types of Democrats across the state. I've seen it happen. And we have to address those issues. There's a reason that, and you're talking about the state that has the highest turnout of African Americans across the nation. So African Americans still believe in the Democratic Party. We're not going anywhere, but we need the Democratic Party to do right by us. Latinos need the Democratic Party to do right by us. And we've got to show that leadership across the board. I'm so excited about Christy Noble becoming our new county chair because she started off organizing, which is exactly where I started off. And that's the right place to start, with organizing, with talking to every single facet of all of our communities. We can get it done, and we should get it done. And all boats are going to rise when we address the most vulnerable of all of our communities. We've got to do it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Jones, same question.
All right, thank you. And so I would definitely agree that the black and brown votes in and across Dallas County are definitely taken for granted, and I think that that's why it's so important that we must be building these partnerships to where we're having these critical conversations about what is going on, and what do we do, and how do we take the issues that are important to both of our communities, um, the things that are the same, and how do we also understand and carry the things that are different, so that that we can mobilize the only thing that will change that being taken for granted, and whether we like it or not, that is the vote, and getting out the vote and making sure that we are getting into and through our communities. And as a precinct chair and as an election judge, I've seen how elected officials treat areas that don't have high voting turnouts, and compared to an area that does, and we must make sure that we are getting out there in those communities where people are tired of being unheard, and tired of not being engaged in the process, and bring them back in, and that they understand how important that their votes are, because the more local that we get when it comes to elections, these elections are made up literally by thousands, if not hundreds, if not thousands, of votes, and those votes have to be dominated by black and brown people, so that we demand that power, and we are prepared to fight for our voices to be heard, because that has been our struggle throughout this state and throughout this country, and we're going to have to continue to fight with our votes and fight with our voices, so that our issues are heard and our issues are acted on. And when I'm elected as the next state representative for House District 100, I want to take and continue to mobilize votes and to mobilize voices, so that even though this is a race that's over, at the first part of the year in a primary, there's still so much work that we have to do to support other Democrats and to support our communities to continue to get out the vote and get their voices heard, so that we protect the seats that we do have that are up for election, in November. So that's going to be critical, and to come and bring it back to your original point, what must be done to turn Texas blue is to understand and get community involved in those conversations, to where they understand again how important that their votes are, and how important it is that they put the right people to serve as our elected officials, so that their voices go with them to Austin to be heard, and their issues to be acted on.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hawkins, same question.
Yeah, I believe a lot of the great things have been said already, but the only thing I'll add is that the young man I met today on the campaign trail was a young black man. The first time he ever voted was in 2008. And the Democratic Party allowed him to fall off their voting rolls. And I think about how many countless Latino and black young people we just allowed to roll off of our voting rolls because we were either complacent, or we weren't busy enough, that we were a bit too busy to talk to them, or they didn't live in a precinct that was a one that we needed to prioritize. I think that we've got to really, really do some soul searching within the Democratic Party and understand how valuable it is that the people of color that are in the Democratic Party carry the Democratic Party. And because of that, we've got to really start talking to people of color and prioritizing issues of people of color at the forefront. These can't be afterthought policies. These can't be by the way kind of policies. These need to be the things that the Democrats are leading on, Democrats are running on, because if the saying is about black folks, but it's true about any racial group in the country besides white folks, is that if rising tides lift all boats. White people get better and are better off if all the minority populations in this country are better off. And so we've got to make incredible policies and lead with those policies and talk to people on the ground about the things that are going on in their daily life. I think that will create a better investment. And so while I am disappointed that we allowed this young brother and countless thousands of others to just be taken for granted across our county and across our state, I am optimistic for the future that we can actually turn a corner and actually start engaging and really start having meaningful, true conversations with Texans, with progressive, minority-focused policies and solutions at the forefront. So.
Okay. All right. We got, and we're going to have a couple more questions. I'll ask one more question before I hand it off to Ernest. And this is something I definitely want to know. And I'll keep this question with you, Mr. Hawkins. What was going on in your mind when the House Democrats wrote quorum?
The honest opinion is hell yeah. In my mind, I think that the boldness of the Democratic Party often, I sit back and think about how bold Republicans are. We have Republicans who are bold enough to say that an insurrection against the country, Texas Republicans are saying that an insurrection against the country for the first time in our 150 plus years is just a little riot, something not much to do about nothing.
Right.
And we accept that as something that is normal. And then they are able to go and have elections and run people off of this idea. That's a bold concept. And what's a bold concept? The boldest thing I've seen Texas Democrats do in a while is say, damn that, you're not going to force voting rights down our throats and believe that we're just going to say, oh, okay, well, look, throw up our hands, we're done. No, I think that it was a great situation led by several of the most progressive leaders in our state legislature. And it was something that needed to be done. And it was, although, the Republicans got what they wanted right now, it's a battle, in my opinion. I think that we're eventually going to win the war because we're on the side of people. So,
all right, Mr. Clayton.
Sure. So, the fact of the matter is that I was in the mix. I was there, supporting the state representative Tony Rose. I'm her senior advisor, and every single day we were fighting. We were fighting throughout the entire legislative session. And here's the crazy part about it. Every single day I walked into the Capitol working on legislation. And this is one of the worst legislative sessions in the past 30 years. Everyone has said it. I experienced it. And the crazy part is that, I'm bumping into legislators every single day who see me and they say hi to me and pat me on the back. How's it going, Daniel? And at the same time, these very same individuals who I'm talking to every single day are fighting like heck to remove my ability to vote, to take away our grandmother's ability to vote. So why? For political power. For political power for a small group of people who's becoming even smaller. Think about it. It's a travesty. And we have to continue to fight. When those Democrats walked out, I was jumping up and down and celebrating. And it reminded me of the last time they walked out. I was working for the Texas Democratic Party in 2003. The last time we had to walk out. In fact, I was one of I was a part of one of the secret plans to transport the senators out of the Capitol. And I drove a van of those senators from the Capitol in 2003 to that private jet and flew them out to Albuquerque. So I've been around. I've done the work. I'll continue to do the work. I was excited that we stood up. One of the reasons I've been so excited about Representative Crockett is because she stood up, she spoke out, and she didn't back down. And this was an example of our Democrats not backing down. They took the fight to D.C. where, and of course, we know that we need the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. We've got to restore the DOJ's ability to protect the vote and our freedom to vote. And they went up to D.C. and they left their families and they left Texas to do just that. I'm so proud of them. It was one of the hardest things that they did. It was hard on us as staffers to support them. It was definitely hard on them. And every single day, I just am so proud of the work that they did and proud of being an opportunity to help support that work.
Okay. And same question for you, Mr. Jones.
Well, definitely, as everybody echoed, just so proud of our leadership. Taking that bold step, because there was a moment, before it happened. If when you ask yourself, is this really going to happen? And it did. And Democrats, really stood up for democracy, that day, and really just said enough is enough. And so, without going, into too much, I was proud to see that, and just proud to see the echoing of that, throughout the summer, where people saw their leadership standing up and became empowered themselves, to get people out to vote, to get a part of campaigns, to get out and educate people, about the issues, because that's where I was at. I was out in the community, working with the community, to look at how do we continue to beat this drum, that we must hold our voting rights sacred, and that we cannot let the things that are supposed to be afforded to us, in the fabric of our Constitution, be continued to be dismantled. And so when it comes to our rights to, the several rights, not just voting, but our rights to assemble, our right of freedom of speech, all of those things, are really being under attack, because as we talk about voting rights, even our right to assemble, as Black bodies were being killed, we're challenged with some of these crazy orders and bills that were being, put down, and supported by our governor. So again, I was proud of not only what the House Democrats did, but what our state did to stand up, to say enough is enough. And just when people thought that there was nothing else that we had, we continued to give, and we continue to get out there. And that's what we're going to continue to do as we move forward, and as we do the necessary work that will turn Texas blue.
Perfect, man. I tell you, and let me just say this, because I think it's important to note that politics can get real ugly, and I want to commend each one of you fellows, man, for being very professional in this setting, because a lot of times it can get real ugly. So I want to give you kudos for that, number one. Secondly, I want to thank you guys also for just being a part of the podcast. And I'm just going to make another note so that it's clear. The invitation was branched out to every single candidate for House District 100. And unfortunately, Ms. Sandra Crenshaw, she had a unforeseen circumstance. She was not able to be here. I just wanted to be clear that she was an invited guest as well. And the last thing, because I'm telling you, we run out of time. Y'all have been awesome with your comments. And the last question we're gonna state, and please limit it to 1 minute if you can, as far as your final words. Why should constituents of House District 100 vote for you? And we'll start with Mr. Vinton.
Okay. Again, my name is Vinton Jones, and I know I'm running for House District 100. But I think constituents should vote for me because I'm from this community. I've seen firsthand how this community has changed, not only over a few years, but throughout my entire life, throughout the lives and stories of my family that continue to be there. So not only from a professional standpoint or from a legislative standpoint that I've been there because I've lived there. And I'm going to take those experiences to Austin, that will not only complement my public policy background and my public health background, and my civil rights and social justice background, but also just my lived experiences of knowing what it is on that block, because I've seen life go down and change in so many different ways. And I hope what people hear when they hear somebody that they're looking to vote for, that they hear the amount of pride that I have in my voice to be able to represent this community. And even though South Oak Cliff High School is not in House District 100, there is still so much love for SOC and so much love for the energy that was created, yesterday with the parade, where we were so proud as a community to go down Marsalis Avenue and just be proud of something that we don't always get to see going down Marcellus. And so I hope that when constituents think about who they vote for, they also think about somebody who has not just walked the walk and talked the talk and done the work, but somebody that's going to take that pride in their hearts because they know what it is to be raised in the streets of Oak Cliff, that to be in West Dallas, alongside West Dallas, East Dallas, but to also get to grow into that and to be able to be in a place to where they're able to give back. And this is now my opportunity to be able to give back. And I hope constituents and I hope voters see that I'm ready to give back and I'm ready to be the next state representative for House District 100. Please visit my website, Vinton 100.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Mr. Hawkins next.
All right. Thank you so much for having this forum, guys. Again, it was a really enjoyable time. Appreciate it. But I believe that people in District 100 should vote for me. Is not only I believe I'm the best candidate, but also because I've done the work, I've seen the work up close from a professional sense, and I also from a personal sense. I think that I have the God-given talent and the God-given ability to get the job done and to advocate for everything that people in District 100 need. But most importantly, I think I have an ear. I think I have an ear for what people are asking for. And I know that my other ear listens. And I know that we can do a ton of things in District 100 that might not even require legislative approval. And I know that I have the ability to bring people together. I'm one of those people who, again, I also, just to Vince's point, I walk the walk and talk the talk, but I also listen. And what I've heard is that it's our time. It's our time to talk about the rising property taxes that are impacting homeowners and renters alike. It's our time to demand education reform at the state level for both students and for public school teachers. I think that we also need to demand a better quality health care for our seniors as well. And I think it's our time to start doing that. And I think that voters are hearing that as well. And so that's why I've tried my best to encourage folks to join my campaign who are on the ground and understand the issues because they see them and live them up close. And I think we're building a coalition of folks who want to see change right now and are demanding that action right now because they believe it's our time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hawkins. Last, we'll end with Mr. Clayton.
Again, thank you for having us on your forum tonight. This has been great. I've had a lot of fun. And listen, I think that the voters in District 100, after looking at the leadership that was given to us by Representative Crockett, they want somebody that knows how to get the job done and have gotten the work done for the district. I've gotten the work done for the district. Again, we passed House Bill 133 in one of the worst legislative sessions in the past 30 years. That's getting the job done. You know, I left my job with Senator West to go get people signed up for health care. During that period of time of those 2 years, working for Enroll America as the North Texas regional lead, we signed up over 400,000 families for Obamacare, representing over 1 million people, some of them getting health care for the first time. Addressing gun violence. You know, I was one of the organizers for the Enough is Enough Stop the Violence event that we had at the African American Museum in the district. Not only have I worked inside state government, I've worked outside state government, starting a social emotional learning program to help our students. And I did it for an entire year, reading to students, because we know by the statistics that if a student is not reading up to par by the 3rd grade, that they're likely to drop out and likely to enter the criminal justice system. That's the reason that I started reading. I did it as an act of defiance, instilling the love of reading in our students. Not everything that gets done has to be done through a governmental agency. I've proven that with my work. I've proven that I can get the job done legislatively, that I can get the job done through the Democratic Party, through all of my work there. And I just think that right now, times are so critical that we need someone who can go in on day one and get legislation passed that's important to the constituents of District 100. It's too critical to let this opportunity pass. And I think that when you look at all of our track records, when you look at all of the work that all of us have done, you'll find that I've done the most work. Please visit my website at Daniel4100. That's DanielFor100.com. And you will be able to have an opportunity to see for yourself the work, see some of the articles that I've been in the Dallas Morning News about healthcare and about stopping gun violence, and make the decision for yourself. I hope to earn your trust and your support. And I look forward as we move forward through this campaign and to meet you at your door. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys so much. And in closing, we'll turn it over to Tremont for the final closing.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate these brilliant brothers and their race for the House seat for District 100. We definitely appreciate their time, and their expertise, and their courage as well. Because it takes a lot to run. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of sacrifices. It takes a lot of asking folks for money. And I definitely, we definitely salute you brothers, for definitely taking that plunge out and running. We definitely want to give a shout out to BS3 Network for this platform, as well as Roku TV. You can find us on Roku TV, YouTube, and most of the podcast platforms. This was a good one, Ernest, and we definitely appreciate it. We'll catch you guys next week. And again, thank you guys for tuning in.
Damn, I should have told him.
Oh.
Yes, sir. We're going to tell y'all to come